Ladies and gentlemen, it's good to be back here. It's always good to be here. We love the energy here. It's positive. We drink from it. There is so much darkness in our country and around the world, both figuratively and literally. But when you come to ULP, I don't know about you, I'm speaking from my own experience. I walk out of here feeling good about myself, about the future, and about tomorrow. And I leave here believing that tomorrow is going to be better than yesterday. And that's why I keep coming back. So it's good to be back here, and welcome. And thank you for being brave enough to attack the Midrand traffic intersections with no lights. It was a little bit better for me this afternoon, I must say, and I'm told it's because schools are closed. So, and it's good to have Lillian Barnard here next to me. Isn't she wonderful? She looks absolutely stunning. Now, I'm going to just give you an overview before we have our conversation. So you know I tend to do a little bit of digging for our guests and then try and bring the conversation down that route. And Lillian is a consummate professional. She's going to give us enough food for thought. So let me begin. Lillian Barnard was appointed as the Chief Executive Officer of Microsoft South Africa in March 2019. She joined Microsoft in May 2017 as the Public Sector Director for South Africa, a role she held for almost 2 years. Barnard has more than 20 years' experience in the ICT industry. She is a seasoned professional with proven capabilities and a strong understanding of the market. She completed a 7-year international assignment living in Paris, France, and Zurich, Switzerland. Through the various executive positions that Barnard has held both locally and abroad, she has gained extensive knowledge in sales, operations, business controls, strategy, business transformation, and leadership. This experience, combined with a deep industry knowledge, positions her perfectly to strengthen Microsoft's commitment to South Africa and its wishes to drive its digital transformation ambitions and empower governments, organizations, and individuals to achieve more. She has become renowned for building strong, high-performing teams that consistently deliver on their financial targets, while also bringing innovative digital solutions to her partners and customers. Having led large teams both locally and abroad, she is recognized for strength in developing people and creating an environment where everyone can do their best work. Barnard, sitting right next to me, smiling with me, is passionate about enabling a truly diverse and inclusive workplace. By drawing on her own experiences, she endeavors to create a culture that enables people to bring their authentic selves to the workplace and be embraced for that individuality. She has been pivotal in reigniting the South African chapter of Women at Microsoft and spurring a culture that encourages gender equality in the workplace. Prior to joining Microsoft, Barnard served as Chief Sales Officer for Vodacom's enterprise business for 2 years. She also headed the Lillian B Consulting Services, where she was an advisor and coach to business leaders. During Barnard's 15-year career at IBM, she held several key leadership positions, including working for 7 years at IBM European headquarters in France and Switzerland. She previously served on the boards of Vodacom South Africa, Mango Airlines, and Debt Fund non-profit organizations. She currently sits on the board of the American Chamber of Commerce and the Gauteng Provincial Government 4IR Commission. She also serves as advisory board member of the Institute for Intelligence Systems at the University of Johannesburg. Barnard holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree and honors in economics from the University of the Western Cape. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Lillian Barnard to ULP.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
It's also good to hear your voice, having spoken all about your background. Now I know how it feels when people are reading your background in front of you. It felt like an obituary. So, first things first. Lillian, we're going to have a conversation about how you got here. We know you didn't just get born to be CEO. Yeah. So we will take it from there. And also we want to know what was happening in the car.
Yes.
But first things first.
Yes.
I gather congratulations are in order. Ladies and gentlemen, Lillian Barnard was just this last week honored at the Women in Tech Africa Awards with a Lifetime Achievement Award. Where I got this information from, the Lifetime Achievement Award people also added a little blip in the end. They said Lillian will be the finalist in our 5th annual Women in Tech Global Movement Awards in Dubai. Congratulations.
Thank you, Milton.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
It is so wonderful to be honored, and we also want to honor you here as well as we hear your story, which I am certain will inspire many of us.
Thank you.
So, where did it all begin? I'm told that you grew up in the West Rand, Potchefstroom side, Northwest, and you came to Johannesburg later. And at 12 years old, you knew exactly what you wanted to study. I gather that you wanted to go to university and pursue a commerce degree at 12. Tell us more.
Thank you, Milton. And let me also honor Professor Maurice Radebe. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I know we've been communicating on LinkedIn and then on WhatsApp. And I promised I would come. And it's such an honor to be here. And just thank you to also do this fireside chat with you. And good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming and just listening to my story. So how did it all start? So at 12 years, I grew up in a very small town. And I always say this to people when they do write my story. I say, you must write it well. And what do I mean by that? I said, you must write it well so that people know where I come from. So that that young girl in that small town, when she reads the story, she must be so inspired and think, oh my goodness, there's hope for me, right? Because it didn't all start in Johannesburg. So it started in a small town, Potch, you're right. My parents actually moved there, and I come from, at least in my definition, a very interesting background. So people often ask me, oh, we thought after 94 you would change your surname. And I'm like, to what? Because Barnard is very confusing, by the way. I said, no, I said, actually, that is my real surname because my father came from a very interesting background and a mixed background, too. So his mom was Tswana and his father was half-colored, really, really mixed. And this is kind of where Barnard came from. And my father actually married a Tswana woman, so my mom's Tswana, and they got together. And we lived in this community where people tend to do that. Most people were super mixed. And it was actually interesting because a lot of people ask me, so where do you get your diversity from, your outlook in terms of diversity? And I think it started from a young age too, because what people tend to do, you get this question of, what are you, who are you, because they're not sure, right? And what you then tend to do throughout life, you tend to define your identity. What was great about my parents coming together, my father was actually the only one following in, his dad's footsteps, marrying a Tswana woman because his mom was Tswana, was that my mom came from a very different background. She was a nurse. She was very focused on education, and she was super strict. And I always said to her, you were the strictest in the community, always. So we had no choice but to remain focused in school. I mean, and we came from these small Nyana schools, right? Nothing ever happened. But we had good teachers, good enough, because remember, what sets you apart in terms of, if you look at quality of education, is the quality of the teacher. It's not necessarily the building. And that is why we tend to send often kids to private school, because you're looking for a quality education, but it really resides within the quality teachers. So my mom was always very insistent, going to negotiate with the principal to say that I need good teachers. And I remember there was a period when we didn't have a math teacher, and she just would not stand for it. And I remember her marching to the school about, you need to get a math teacher in school, because I wasn't even aware of it at the time, but there's very few things you can study really without maths. So my parents kept us very focused, and back to the age of 12, because the school was small and they didn't have a lot of money, so what they then did was that they took the top 5 students, they did some aptitude tests on them. This is how my commerce came about. So I knew I wanted to go and do BCom. A lot of people really didn't know what it was, and because people didn't study BCom, let's be honest, right, in our community, because people typically went for nursing and maybe teaching. So my aptitude test came up to say I need to follow a commerce degree because I was luckily very good in maths. And I was clear. I was like, well, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And surely at the age of 17, I was on a train to Western Cape and to go and study a commerce, ended up doing my honors as well. And then got into the world of work, left Cape Town. Of course, most of the jobs were at the time in Joburg. And this is how I kind of landed my first job in Joburg.
Isn't that beautiful? That's a lovely story. I wish I grew up there myself. So, am I right in understanding that you had 2 degrees at 21? Is that correct? Did you hear that? 2 degrees at 21. Why are you not clapping? It's not every day, right? I mean, do you get this every? Do you remember Nyimpini? In fact, I was with him today. Do you remember Nyimpini Mabunda, CEO of General Electric? He was at university. He matriculated at 15. Was at university before he turned 16. You remember?
Yes.
So now here we go. We've got 2 degrees at 21. Good Lord, what was I doing at 21? Don't ask. Don't ask. Dust, Orlando Pirates, nothing else. So Lillian, thank you for leading us. Now, here we are very keen on your story, of course, to inspire others, but we're also big on mentorships. And you touched a little bit about your teachers. But I read that your mom and your dad were your very first big mentors. Tell us about that.
Yeah, my parents were amazing. And actually, I don't take it for granted when you do come from a good home, because it's a privilege. It grounds you, it gives you direction, and it gives you confidence. It's a huge privilege to be in leadership. I often trace back to my leadership style, and I find that a lot of my value system come from home. As much as I've been exposed to some of the best leadership courses, having worked abroad, having been mentored by some of the most amazing people, the way that they just role modeled in terms of very simple things like humility. I don't think you can actually pick up humility at 25. That's something that gets instilled in you at the age of 5, right? When you get taught by your parents that there's no difference. You don't differentiate. I remember it was very confusing when we would come back from, you know what it's like when you come back from university, your first year, and for some reason you kind of think you've already graduated. And you haven't, you've just registered, right? So my mom was very good in keeping us super grounded, right? So we had to greet everyone in, you know, the township and go and say hello to so-and-so. And those things are good because you have to constantly keep your feet on the ground. I saw my dad feeding people from nothing. We had nothing, but he managed to feed people, right? So the guy that was always helping him out in the garden, and I mean, it sounds elaborate. It was really not a garden, but we wanted to keep it clean. There was no difference to the way he treated that guy and he treated us. And I think I learned early on with children that actually we don't do what they say, we do what they do. My dad had a tendency of, when we would go to people, to his sisters, and it doesn't matter, actually it was even just family, he would put groceries in the car always. I find myself doing that too. When I go to people, I don't know how to just come there by myself. Like, I must buy something, take something worth. And this is kind of the role modeling. I saw two honest, hard-working people trying every single day, trying to make it work. I remember when it was very clear when I was in Standard 9, because it wasn't grades, right? It was very clear that I would go to university by Standard 8. My mom started buying stuff, ironing board, put it on top of the wardrobe, iron on top of the wardrobe. So she literally saved over a period, and that takes discipline. It takes diligence to say, hey, it's Christmas, you know how we do. You paint, you do new curtains because it's Christmas, right? And she's like, no, I don't think I can do this for 2 years in a row because I actually need to send another child to university because my elder sister was already at university, and so on. And you look at those things, and those were the things that inspires me, things like getting up early, doing the hard work, because I often do get the question from young people to say, oh, Lillian, what does it take to get here? And I say this to young people, nothing still trumps hard work. Nothing. You can outwork anyone any day if you want to. And there is no shortcut to success. There's no short left. Really, there is just one straight, very long road that you must be willing to travel to do the hard yards worth. And this is what I actually saw my parents do.
And you come from a home with 3 other sisters, right. Am I correct?
Yes.
And in the pecking order, how did that work? How did that help you gain your own value system, knowing how to, you know, I come from 2 other brothers and we had a younger sister, and the pecking order, they toughens you up. Those guys are tougher than some of the guys on the streets on you, right? So you become a little bit vaquer, you know, from home, just in the kitchen there, the bedroom, you know, you get vaquer because they keep you on your toes, right? How was that for you?
So we 4 girls, and so 2 years apart, then a very healthy 5-5, right? If you're 5 years, it's really great. But my parents were very good, and they were very strict with, until today, we get along like a song, I promise you. It's very hard for us because now we've got choices. We can decide whether we want to talk to each other or not, right? But because of those value systems and in fact, actually, one of the things that we do stand on is Psalm 133, because that was my father's favorite scripture. And he was very adamant that we would, 1, get along, but also 1, understand the pecking order of respect. If you would see how we respect my elder sister, it would absolutely surprise you. If you would see how my younger sisters respect me. So we don't create confusion by swimming in each other's lanes. And I find when you create that level of clarity, it brings a lot of peace, right? It also reduces profoundly competition because there actually is no competition. Why should there be? But those were early values that we were taught because my dad was very clear that, hey, should the world turn its back on the 4 of you, you would only have each other. And it's so important to understand that early because we've seen it at the toughest moments. When my father passed away 20 years ago, it was the 4 of us coming together with my mom having to make some decisions. You see it in those moments. And I'm very glad for that clarity because we also know how to cheer for each other. My sisters, and I said this when I actually won the award, that my sisters are my biggest cheerleaders. They clap before I win. I mean, this award about the lifetime, it's crazy. You should have seen it when I started sending. I said, I even had to explain to them and say, I was nominated. Do you understand nomination? And I don't think it was, I said, let me explain it and break it down for you. But they were like, no, you're going to win. I said, this is so stressful, right? Because it's like, it's insane. But that is who they are. And we have an incredible, busy family group. And my younger sister's daughters also kind of joined it and very hectic on there. And I find it helps, but I think also it needs to come from an inward thing of understanding your accountability to each other. What do I mean? We are often willing to make some deep investments in friendships, which is, by the way, okay, but often we don't make the same investment in family. We think that relationships in family are just automatic. It's not. You're going to have to invest in that sister relationship as much as you invest in that friendship. You know, the way you go out for coffees, for teas, and how you would buy gifts for friends, whatever. If one could apply those same principles, you will find some of these family relationships tend to last for a lifetime.
What a beautiful story. Oh. I haven't even met this family. I already love them. Now, I like the idea that that value system, and it kind of reminded me of how I grew up as well, that your parents taught you, as you said, to be humble, working hard, which you mentioned, but also there are things like integrity, always to tell the truth, you know. You need to be taught to tell the truth. It's so easy to lie, you know, to say you didn't steal the sugar when you actually did. So your parents have to teach you that. And when you are older, it starts to show, right? Who was brought up how, right? I mean, you can see what's going on with the tenderpreneurs, right? How they grew up. So let's now move to your post-university life. So you get to work for IBM.
Actually, no, there's a story before IBM.
Before IBM, what happened? Yes.
So there was a story. Actually, it's funny. I made some very simple choices. I was like, I need a job that can get me to Joburg because I had a job in Cape Town, and I thought I actually don't want to stay in Cape Town. So there was an NGO. I didn't even know what it was, but it offered me a job in Braamfontein, and I thought this one is taking me back. That's great. And it was called Informal Business Training Trust. And it was like a business advisor. They would, advising small, business owners, helping them with their finances. And it was really, a great job, small job. Luckily, it got me back. And after 18 months, I thought, I need to find a job where I can grow. So that I did that for about 18 months. And that kind of is not on my CV for some reason. So then I thought I need to get into corporate, and I had actually a few offers. It was, at the time, it was IBM, it was Coca-Cola, it was a bank. And when you come out of university, it's not a deep choice. Let's also be clear. Tech was not very, hip at the time. So because people often ask me, so how did you get into tech, and how did you know that, this is what, tech would become, and digital would actually, do all of this to the world? I said, no, I just needed a job. So IBM was then starting to recruit graduate hires. So it was me consulting my sister about, I need to now go for this job. What do you think? And there's 3, and it's like, honestly, like, this sounds like a good one. And my familiarity with IBM came as a result of having studied business at university, and because it was American textbooks, as you can imagine, IBM was then, quite iconic, right? The blue chip company to work for at the time. And so I thought, I'm going to go work for it. So what they were doing at the time was, that was just after 94. So they were hiring the first diverse graduate intake, 100 of us to start. It was quite a well-curated program. What's important about my journey was that, so they assign you to managers, I ended up working for a black manager. She was black American on assignment from the US. That changed a lot about my journey because she saw me. She saw me early. She was super intentional about mentoring me, coaching me, training me. She had a house in Bryanston, and I was still living in Berea at the time. And, you know, she would be like, don't you want to come spend time with me? And, you know, I'm doing this. And, you know, I remember her taking me to meetings with her, and I would sit in these executive meetings and think, I don't even understand this. And she's like, it's good, just take the notes. And because when you start taking notes, the dots will start connecting. And that was an important part of my journey. And this is how IBM actually started for me.
And I like the name of the program that took you in. Was it called Rainbow Hires?
The Rainbow Hires, yes.
What was Rainbow Hires?
Because it was the first diverse intake. So there was because as you can imagine, right, quite prior to that, most of these companies were not deliberate about hiring black graduates. So in that program, we were probably about 50% of the program, quite well balanced, and it was a bunch of youngsters from university, on average having 1 to 2 degrees, and IBM was quite renowned for bringing in young people, interns, training them, and taking them all the way because they had one of the strongest leadership programs. And what's also clear about those programs is that often your trajectory and your success is very dependent on the manager you end up working for. Because remember, when you do get into a company, your manager becomes your reality. It's the level of interest they take in you that will make a difference. For example, you know, are they going to give you real work? Are they going to give you chances? Are they going to open up a world to you? I mean, one of the things she did for me was that, I mean, I didn't even have a passport. Now I've got like 3+ more, right? So she's like, you've never been overseas? I was like, no. She's like, okay, there's a conference in Los Angeles. I'm like, okay. So my first trip overseas was to Los Angeles because we had one of the biggest conferences going there. I cannot tell you how petrified I was. I kept on asking. I remember we were flying through Heathrow, and I was so worried about my bag. And I thought, God, I need to get there with my bag. Will they remember? You know, it's just so, it was complicated. It's complicated. I mean, maybe it's best for your first trip to be to Cape Town, right? But my first trip was to Los Angeles. And I remember Heathrow, and I said to her, she said, don't worry, ma'am, you're going to get your bag. Landed in Los Angeles. You see this, and you think, this is really worrisome, right? I ended up going to the attendant, where's my bag? She said, no, it's that conveyor belt. But it ended up being an amazing experience because when I got there, she had some of her senior manager friends waiting for me, showing me a bit around. And this is where my love for mentorship comes because, you know, once the mind is stretched, it can never return back to its original dimension. You can never be the same. You can't pretend that you weren't there. Right? Because it profoundly changes you and it opens up a world to you that you were never exposed to before.
Oh, my goodness. That's beautiful. Now, I like the idea when you talk about passion. So people who get to this level of success, to the dizzying heights of CEO level, they come there through hard work, of course, as we just heard. But that hard work is driven by something else. You don't just wake up and work hard. You know, miners work very hard. But do they want to be digging? Let's be honest. So there is something else that happens that drives you, the fuel that drives you. Prof, the fuel? Yeah? Guys, you've got to give it to me. That was unplanned, unscripted. Mama tu Jesu ya pila basho journalist. How on earth did I even get that fuel with passion? I don't know. But passion. Now, Lillian said in something I read that when you have passion, you can convert, or passion can convert you from average to excellent. Tell us about that. I love that phrase, from average to excellent.
Thank you for that, Milton. You know, I was always very curious about what would differentiate me in the workplace the right way, right? Because there's the wrong way. The wrong way is you climbing on people's backs to hopefully get ahead. But the right way, which sometimes takes longer, and that's okay too, is some of these softer parts. Because remember, when you join the workplace, and all of you are educated, you all have degrees, what is the differentiator? Because it's no longer education. Because you all are actually starting on an equal footing. So you then realize, back to the point around working hard, becoming passionate about what you do. And I've recently changed this, because in this role right now, I am super passionate about what I do. I love the company I work for. I love what I do. But what's profoundly true is that when you start your career, you don't really like everything they give you, right? Because some of them may be odd tasks, odd jobs. But this is at least what I say to my son. Find a way to love what you do so that you can ultimately do what you love. But it takes discipline.
Yes,
right?
I'm trying to claim that. I don't know about you. Me, I'm honest. I want to brag about these phrases tomorrow. I'll be sitting there at Villagas and say, find what you love, but... So I want to get it right, you know. Say it again.
Love what you do so that you can ultimately do what you love. Because now I'm doing what I love, but I had to learn how to love what I was given. And that takes a lot of discipline. It takes diligence. It finds a way for you to become passionate, to develop an interest. And passion is something that you can develop. And passion is often a differentiator in the workplace. Because when you are passionate, you bring that energy, you bring that fire, you bring that fuel, Professor Maurice Radebe, right? Inside of you, which allows you to burn the midnight oil. You go in on a Saturday, because then you couldn't still work from home. You had to go to the office, right, to get some connection. Because you will find that work can become quickly mundane, if you don't contextualize it for yourself. You must give work context. Why do I do what I do? Why should I come every day? Why don't you just sleep at home? Why should you do this to a point of excellence? What is, by the way, your standard of excellence? Right? And these are the hard questions you're going to have to ask yourself, so that you don't just accept average. Because, hey, the extra mile, that highway is not crowded. We know that.
I like what you say just there, because I dug it out.
Okay.
And I want to brag. I'm quoting you back to yourself now, which is something I hear often about myself. The road called the extra mile is called the road less traveled.
Correct. It is still. I've had the privilege to go back to some of my early mentors to say, I'm so curious. I want to know, out of the 100, because remember, we were 100 who started, how did you pick me? I mean, we were not rich. I didn't have a special surname or any of those things, right? Because sometimes it's good to know what you're good at so that you could hone it. And you are not casual about your gifts. We should never be casual about our gifts. And this is what they said to me. They said, when you joined, and this is how, by the way, the age of 28, that was me breaking into the boardroom. Remember, I broke into the boardroom at 28 at IBM. And they said, when you all joined, there's a couple of things you did. You were not willing to sit still. You kept on asking for, give me work, give me work. I didn't even realize I did that. When they started the Diversity Council, I put my hand up to say, okay, I'll be the chair. I didn't even know how to chair a meeting, but, you know, the desire was there. But I was always willing to do the odd jobs. That is why I still say today that the best jobs are often dressed in overalls. We all want the glitz and the glamour. You know, we all want the mic. We all want the stage. But, you know, often these jobs don't come packaged to you that you could have your driver coming, dropping you off like mine just did. Right? It doesn't. But behind all of these things, there is a path to it. And that is why it's important that you focus on the hard yards, you focus on the passion, so that a couple of things early in your career to do is to build up skill. How do you build up depth? How do you build up depth? How do you get to know what you know? How do you know you're good at something? You're good at something when you end up doing it long enough. Milton, you've stayed for 30 years in your profession. You're a professional at it, right? But it takes a lot of discipline to do that and also to do well at it, right? And these are key things that we need to talk to young people about. My son is, by the way, tired of all my slogans, by the way. So he's like, Mom, I'm over-mentored. He often says to me, Mom, I'm over-mentored, right? So it's that level of passion where you understand. And then purpose, when I talk about the context, give context to say, when I do this, what is the broader meaning? What would my impact be? When you become a leader, what is my purpose of leadership? Is my purpose of leadership because I think I can control people? Or is it because I think I can impact their lives for the better? Is it because I think I can grow them, I can develop them, because they can excel under me? So it's all about kind of double-clicking on some of these very ordinary concepts and actually give a meaning for yourself.
So Lillian has just walked straight into ULP because she's talking about purpose. And this series of talks we hold here are titled CEO with a Purpose. So now you've already sort of given us where yours come from. I also read that you like the John Maxwell quote, which is, your true power, it's to empower others. It's about sharing, not about selfishness, but being selfless. And that's what you're talking about. And that's what drives you where you are now.
Totally. And actually, when often when people come to me and say, I want to become a leader, I find it very interesting. I said, okay, why? For you or for others? Because actually leadership is hard work. Leadership is serving. It's not actually prestigious, by the way. The title, fantastic. But behind all of that, there's a whole lot of hard work. And to go back to the quote around, your power is to empower. It is profoundly humbling when you realize how true that is. What do I mean? So in my current role, I've got some serious KPIs. Now, I've got only 24/7. I've got like 7, days. I've got 24 hours to do stuff. If I think I'm going to achieve those extraordinary outcomes all by myself, it's just not true, right? That is when you realize, oh my word, the power for me to achieve lies within the power of the people to achieve. And if I empower them, we can ultimately get to those outcomes. Because as you get more senior, you get further away from the action. Let's be frank. You get further away from the action. So you better become consumed with, how do I build skill? How do I build capability? How do I build leaders? How do I build leaders that will be bold enough to partner with you, because you can't control them, to go after the bold vision that you will cast? And that in itself needs a profound partnership.
One of the things we talk about quite often here is obstacles and how people sort of manage to overcome hurdles that stand in the way. And a lot of the leaders that we've kind of heard from, people we admire, it's never been a smooth sailing road. There's always some obstacle somewhere, something trips you, there's a bit of, I know Professor says he doesn't use the word failure. You use what, Prof? What's the phrase? I tried to cram it. First attempt in learning. Yes. So in your trajectory, where were the pitfalls for you? And what did you learn from them?
You actually learn a lot from your pitfalls. You need it because it builds character. Because if you have one straight line to success, you're in trouble. Because where will you learn humility, perspective, meeting people halfway because you understand, where they're coming from because you've been there. What story will you actually come and tell on a stage like this if you hop from mountaintop to mountaintop, right? Give me the cup, right? I'm getting a Lifetime Achievement Award, and that's actually never life, to be frank. So if I think about my own journey, and I often don't talk about it, but this one is actually quite important because I think there's context for it. So when I was 24, I was almost about to get married. It didn't work. And I had a son and I had to make some tough choices, which I did. I've done this entire journey as a single mom, which has been incredibly hard. Actually, thank you. I was just saying to my sister, you know, I do a lot of hard things, but I can still tell you backpacking a child through a career is hard. Yeah. And by the way, my son is using the phrase, Mom, you backpacked me through your career. I said, please, don't tell people that I backpacked you through my career. But what they did for me was building resilience. Because resilience is something you only find out you have in the moment when it's called upon. So for example, after the age of 28, and I did a really good job locally, they decided to post me internationally. Now, I have a son, 6 years old, and now you're sitting there and you hear different voices telling you, how are you going to do it? Because let's also be frank, in Europe, you don't have at least the privilege that we have, where you have access to people that can help you and aid your life. We are very privileged to have people who can live in our homes and help us live just a better life because they clean it for you. Seriously, that's the context for me of just having, you know, a helper. And a lot of people say, oh, maybe it's too premature, wait until your son gets big. And I'm like, no way, I'm going. And some even advised to say, maybe you should leave him behind. I'm like, with whom? I'm like, no, I'm packing him with me. And, and I was also very fortunate that my mom became a bit free through an unfortunate circumstance because my father passed away 2 years ago. So my mom became a widow and she had to kind of find her own feet. So I asked her the question, I said, would you move with me to Europe, please? And my mom decided to move with me. She said, yeah. And of course I had to ask my sisters for permission, right? Because I didn't want them to think that, what does this mean for us, you know, you going with her. So my mom moved with me to Europe and still one of the things that I did realize through that experience though, is that your mom cannot be the mother for your child because they're not good. They're not good. So I had to, because what I did was that when we got to Paris, I'm like to my mom, oh, I'm traveling so much, I'm leaving you with him. And one day I thought, what is happening here? And I realized, oh no, she's not mothering him, she's grandmothering him. And this is not good. I need to get back into the mothering job, right? And I relegated her back to grandmother. I'm like, you can't do this, right? So that was hard, and for example, I had to make some tough choices, Milton. Like, I remember when I got my son, when we were in Switzerland, my son, you know, the international schools are fantastic, but very demanding. And my son, they decided to give my son the Nelson Mandela Project, and they do that because kids are from all over in the world. And then they say the moms must come to school because on average, the moms don't work and they can't come to school because the dads do kind of my job. So then I looked at this program and I thought, I'll never be able to go to school. Where will I go to school? I've got to be in reviews, and in fact, we're flying to the US. So my younger sister, I said to her, what are you doing for the next month? She said, why? I said, please come to Switzerland. She said, but they're going to fire me. I said, that's good. I'll find you another job. I said, I'll find you another job. And literally, my sister had to quit her job to come to Switzerland to help my son with a project for 6 months because I could not physically be there. And these are tough trade-offs you make, but what I often say to women and to people is that it's funny how you pull through in those moments. Your creativity will kick in. You will find a way to kind of make it work. And those were tough moments. And there were also jobs that I had to say no to. I remember when a job came up in the US and my son was then 13, I thought, no, I'm already flying around a lot. This one means I will live on a plane. And I had to say no to that job. And that was going to make me VP by 38. VP by 38. And then you have to have an abundance mentality to say, I just have to believe that an opportunity like that will find me again.
Yeah, I also like something we've had here many times before. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And this is what you're talking about, that you can see something, but it's not the right time for it. Where I come from in the news business, they say timing is everything. 1 minute you can miss the most important moment in life, and the next you can capture it just by turning your head, So I like that. Now, you've spoken about purpose, a life of significance, and helping others through their own journeys. That's what gives you the purposeful sort of approach to it all. It's not about you being CEO or like these people who in government who want to be called DG every 2 minutes, DDG every 3 minutes. Or do you enjoy hello CEO, hello CEO? Do they call you CEO at Microsoft?
Only when I'm with government people, you know how they call you. Never call you by name, they call you by title. No, actually, our culture is very informal. Actually, you would not know on average in Microsoft who's who when you would have a senior leadership meeting with everybody, because the culture is not curated in that way. And I'm very fortunate that I also grew up in cultures where that did not matter. It's good for you because titles are borrowed. I'm temporarily carrying this title. Very soon it will be passed on to somebody else. And the question is, who will you be post the title? And that is why I always say, do more things in your personal power than your positional power, so that your person carries more weight over your position. And I love this, by the way. When I get invitations and people ask me to come speak, and my comms team look at it and I say, oh, I can't come. And then when the company comes back and say, no, we didn't invite Microsoft, we invited Lillian. Oh. And then I think, that's good. You're still maintaining your personal power. And it's very important to balance that, because otherwise you could find yourself bent out of shape post this period. And that is why you have to focus on legacy. You have to focus on significance. The question that you must ask yourself, the people who quickly pick up your phone, it just rings once and will they pick it up again when you're no longer the boss? Yeah. Can you carry those relationships past, right? And that is what we have to focus on. So it is all about the people, whether we like it or not.
I know someone who's very close to me. They used to be a big cheese in a bank, and they left, and they were sharing with me their experience. They say all these important people who they thought were their friends stopped returning the call. So he would call the PAs and say, did you tell them it's me? They're like, no. Say, yes, he got the message. And then he would look at his phone, switch it on and off just to make sure that he did not miss the call. And then that's when it dawned on him that, no, you were not their friend. They were dealing with the bank CEO.
Correct.
Not you.
They're dealing with the title.
And he totally misread the whole thing. And the revelation was quite a lesson.
It can be daunting.
And that's what you're talking about, right?
Totally. It can be super daunting.
I know you told us a little bit about moving to Paris and so on. What happened in Switzerland? When you're from Orlando West like myself, when you say Switzerland, I'm thinking chocolates, beautiful fountains, lots of money under the pavement in the Swiss bank. That's what I think about Switzerland, right?
It is just that.
How was it for you?
Oh, it was amazing. Seriously, I lived in this place called Kusnacht. And actually, I had to go to German school when I got there, so I know a little bit of German. And funny, Tina Turner lived in my area. I'm not name dropping, I promise, but Tina Turner lived in my area.
Oh.
Yes, Tina Turner, because she's married to a Swiss guy, her second husband, not the first one. And it is amazing. It's like, what is staggering? You end up living in a place where there's no need. Which means, let me tell you what I mean by that. So one night I came back from work and I was so tired. So I just had to remember that, okay, I've got the groceries here and I've got my computer bag. Guess what? I took the groceries and I left the computer bag on the bus. So as I got home, I just realized, okay, you need to have 2 bags. A knock at 11 o'clock, the bus driver, to bring back my computer bag. And in my computer bag was my purse, my everything. And that's staggering to see, that you live in a place that you know, Switzerland, in Zurich, they have this tradition whereby if you don't want furniture, there's a season where you take it out and you leave it on the street, and then people can walk around the streets and they can pick stuff. And you would see high quality stuff for days on the street. No one wants it. That's a place of abundance. It's really that, where the government looks after everybody. That is why you can leave this on a train, a public train, somebody will take it to Lost and Found. Because there is no need. They're not hungry. They have a roof over their heads. They're taken care of. And then you understand why some of the challenges that we have locally are so, systemic, because of some of the very basic issues that people are grappling with.
That's so powerful. I want at this stage to welcome those who are joining us online. I know Theo did that, but if you are joining us online, welcome. I hope you are enjoying the conversation as much as we are here in the room. It's hot. It's cooking here because the conversation is so fascinating. So welcome. We will be going, after this short segment that I'm going to go through, we will go to Q&A, which is what we normally do, and allow people to ask questions.
Can I talk about the chocolates, though?
From the floor
Yeah.
and from online.
Yeah.
Please do, because I would like to hear
The
about
chocolates
the chocolates.
are real. I mean, we just see Lind, and that's all we see here. It's like, for real. It's madness. I used to go after work to this place, and it was, of course, not advisable, because the next minute you think, so what's wrong with my jacket? It used to fit. Is it the chocolate or what, right? But it is amazing what they just do with chocolate. It's like chocolate boutiques all over the place. So beautifully done, so amazing that it takes you a while to get used to it, because you're not used to seeing chocolates, in such abundance that is so exquisite, by the way. Whether it's the wrapping, the taste, it doesn't matter. It is really, really all about the chocolates.
The way I imagine it in my blend of milk and honey. And did you go to the Alps for some skiing?
Yes, we actually did that. So I wanted to immerse myself in the experience, because I always believe that when you do go to these countries, go and understand the culture, understand why the Parisians walk around with a baguette and a bottle of wine. What is that all about, right? What is this thing of eating baguette every day? And also the culture of, we've got such strange habits as Africans. So we do groceries month end, by the way. This is how we do it. We go to big stores, and then we buy trolleys full, and we put it right for a month. So I did that. So there was a grocery store called Auchan. I promise you, people were petrified at the till. Like, are you sending this to Africa? I'm like, no, I'm not sending this to Africa. Why? Because I was still new. Because Parisians don't do that. They shop every day for what they eat. Every day. They eat fresh. So every day you'll see them with a small little basket, tomatoes, we're going to cook tonight, tomorrow. I'm thinking, no, we buy it bulk. We keep
check
it
us.
fresh.
You're thinking, check us.
So that was, I tried, by the way, the basket thing, and I thought, Lillian, get yourself together, just become Parisian. It's not practical for me. It was just not a habit I could adopt, right? Because every day I need to decide, what am I cooking tonight? I'm like, no, we do planning, we do bulk buying and whatever. So that was the interesting part. The Alps was good, because what I used to do when my son was young, I used to take him to ski school. So I used to enroll him for ski school, and he loved it. I must tell you, I did not. I stayed at the spa, and we did all of that, but that culture is just fascinating. It looks cold, but it's not that cold, actually, when you are physically there, even though you're so close to everything, and also when you have the right gear. So this was, so when we moved to Paris, we had the biggest day. It was just snowing. It was the biggest snow they've seen since 1975. Now, I remember that was Switzerland, so it was like my first month there. So I saw this, and I thought, shoo, this is hectic. I'm sure no one is going to be at work. So I called in, and I'm like, and they're like, Lillian, where are you? I said, no, I'm home. I'm sure you all are home. They're like, no, we're at work. And I'm thinking, why are you at work? It's snowing, right? And my boss is like, so what does that mean? You're never going to come to the office whilst it's snow? I said, I don't even know how to get there, because what do you wear? What do you put on? He's like, I need to get you to go shopping the next day. So he got his PA to help me out. But you can imagine, because even for us, just when it's raining, it's an event, right? For them, it doesn't matter. It can snow. They go to work. Nothing happens. It's normal. They carry on with life. And for me, that was a huge step, carrying on with life whilst the weather is doing all sorts of things. And that was super interesting.
The one thing I learned in the UK, which was a very sort of sad South African moment. So two things. One was, each time it was raining, and it rains a lot, it rains for a week non-stop, and there are no puddles on the road. And I'm like, but where is the water? Because there will be a dam somewhere in the middle of the road, And I asked the guy in the office, I said, hey man, it's been raining, I don't see water sort of stuck, not all the roads, but some roads must be. The guy says, no, the drainage system works, it collects the water. You see, nobody throws paper in the, in the drain, or dead dogs, You know what we do here. So I was like, hey man, so these drains, it's these drains, And then you feel so dumb afterwards because it's so obvious, right? The other one is, I was in Ireland, in the island of Ireland, in the south town of Kinsale, fishing village, beautiful, looks like a painting when you're sitting there. And we'd gone for lunch at a very nice restaurant, Sunday afternoon. And I was wearing a leather jacket. And I was sitting in the front, I was a passenger. When I got off the car at the restaurant, I took off the leather jacket, I left it on the seat. We get inside, we order drinks. And while we're ordering drinks, I'm like, leather jacket, front seat. Oh, they're gonna break the window of the car, trying to take this thing. So I stand up, I don't tell anyone, I leave quietly, and I go back to the car. And I open the car, I take the leather jacket, put it in the boot. And I'm like, what was I thinking? So I get there, and this Irish guy says, hey, where were you? They were taking main course now. I was like, no, sir, I went out to the car. I said, what's wrong? I said, no, it's nothing wrong. They said, what happened? Is everything okay? I said, no, I left my leather jacket in the front. So I thought maybe it's not smart to leave it there in case someone wants to steal. So I put it in the boot. The guy said, oh, Milton, I'm so sorry. The car keys are in the ignition. Embarrassment. I'm telling you, embarrassment. Because you are thinking, dust, look, shit. It's how you were brought up, right? You thought you were doing the right thing. But actually, you're exposing how you were brought up. Yeah? So it's you with your checkers trolley there. So I want us to move a little bit into the job, right? The Microsoft job. I read and listened to some stuff that you said, which was quite interesting because some of these things, they're new to us, but we've only been in this pandemic 2 years ago. So we think like a lot of the things we're doing now, they feel like we've been doing them for years. But actually, how did the pandemic change work for you? For instance, I know that the role of Microsoft Teams became such a huge thing, right? This is when you think these tech companies are working that far. Next thing you're doing meetings in your pajamas there at home via Microsoft Teams, right? So tell us about that whole transition.
Yeah, we were very privileged at Microsoft that we were actually poised for the moment, because when the pandemic struck, we were rolling out some of these tools, and you talked about timing. This was a perfect timing for a tool we started using Teams actually 18 months before the pandemic. That was the time when we actually internally transitioned from Skype to Teams. And when the pandemic happened, I mean, if I think of some of the technologies we've discussed with customers and talked about some of the waves coming, and I can tell you the narrative which I've shared with CEOs and C-suite executives around technology. So they were kind of like, we talked a lot about digital transformation and how digital technologies are really going to shape what comes next. And I remember the 4 pillars were you need to empower your employees with the right tools. You need to think about customer engagement. You need to focus on how do you ultimately optimize your operations, which means it's all about cost savings, and we see the pressures everywhere now. And also about thinking about brand new revenue streams and using digital technologies for that. That was the narrative. So here comes the pandemic, and it all truly became a reality. Because when the pandemic struck, and we all had to go home, you all remember that moment in March when the president said lockdown level 5, and there were lockdowns all over the world. You had to now figure out, how do I continue to do work, but we're not at work? And then we realized at the time, not, with our customers discussing that work is really not a place you go to, something you do, because often we associated work with an office, bricks and mortar. So we were ready to empower our customers with the right tool. Teams was ready. But we often talk about cloud technologies and cloud-enabled technologies, right? And for what we've managed to do during the pandemic, there's no way you could have had your hard drive under your desk. Because how would you have created the right level of availability in terms of information, the scalability of information, the sharing of information by kind of putting things still on prem? And that is why you realize that cloud-enabled technologies are super empowering. And we found for the first time, after the pandemic and during the pandemic, and Satya said it, our global CEO, that we saw 2 years of digital transformation in 2 months when the pandemic started, because all of a sudden customers started focusing on the power of technology. Because remember, technology at its core and power, it is a tool that enables you to do amazing things. And whether it's in your personal capacity or whether it is at work. And that was great, because customers started saying, come and help us keep our operations afloat. There was another piece that happened as well, was we changed as customers. I shop now more online than ever. And I don't know why I waited for a pandemic, because some of these things were there. Think about how many Sunday meals we order on Uber Eats. And that was a service that came about, even more so as a result of the pandemic. And we saw, and that whole customer engagement, are you going to meet me at the point of my need, not trying to sell what you want to sell? We saw how businesses were stepping up to it. Retail was challenged. I mean, all of these places were kind of empty. And there's so many new services coming as a result of the pandemic, and that was all enabled by digital, because how many new apps don't we have on our phones today just doing stuff, right? And banking has kind of led the pack for some time, because we've stopped really going physically into these buildings. And also new revenue streams. New revenue streams also gave businesses ideas to say, oh, goodness, I could become a digital business. That means that if I develop a service for myself, which I use internally, I may just be able to sell that on to somebody else, because I shouldn't be the only consumer of that. So that is why you find, in terms of market entrance, in terms of where competition is coming from, comes from very different spaces. Think about the fintech space. Think about what's happening between telcos and banks, just kind of like how gray that is becoming, from an industry point of view. And we are just super grateful that we could play a role. And with that role, what we mean is that when I just got the role in March, we launched our local data centers, our cloud infrastructure, because customers were very clear with us to say, we would love to adopt cloud, but it has to be in country. Because there's a huge piece that comes with it. Number one is the whole compliance piece. When you look at data residency, the governance piece, especially because we've got regulated industries such as banking, government is regulated. So we made that investment, ahead of the curve. Of course, we didn't know a pandemic was looming, but when the pandemic came, we were ready to assist industries across the board.
Guys, yeah, much. So I was going to ask you about data centers because they were the first in Africa, which you launched here, and that was March 2019, right? And they're called Azures, is that correct?
Yes.
And it's all about cloud computing, which is what you're describing. There were 54 regions in total. Are they 54 now? I thought
we have a bit more. We have a bit more because we're expanding
and then
rapidly
you expanded.
globally.
Okay. At the time, they were projected to scale up businesses, and there was some sort of potential revenue of 80 billion if you use that whole revenue stream over 5 years. How do they work now? What do they mean? I mean, are you achieving what you had planned when you were launching?
So when we were making our business case to bring our hyperscale data center to South Africa, you can imagine, right, internally in Microsoft, I'm not the only one with a smart idea to want to do this for my country. There's a lot of people doing my kind of job in their respective countries, right? And the way that I always see my role, I say that, I am South Africa's ambassador in Microsoft, but I'm Microsoft's ambassador as well in the country. I speak about what we do. I speak about our investments, but I go back into Microsoft and say, Microsoft, you're going to have to come and invest in this country. It's important for me. So when the company, and this is this multi-billion-dollar investment, when the company decided to land it here and we open it, we understand what it can do for the economy because there's a direct linkage in terms of accelerating the economy of a country by making that investment. And that is why it is such a huge consideration for a company because firstly, it is a huge investment, but also this is also very much related to our own mission, wanting to impact, every person and every organization in particular countries. So let me go back to, big businesses. I talked about regulated industries. I talked about government. You can put them online. They no longer have to worry about, the hardware of computing because you can all move to the cloud. You can scale it. You can create availability for yourself. And this is the benefits that cloud bring. But also let's talk about small businesses. How many small businesses aren't just online? Just online. They don't have a physical presence elsewhere. That is what cloud allows you to do. Because what you do is that you allow businesses to get online and they can scale rapidly because you can now be a small business. You can start, in Mamelodi and you can be in Lagos. And you can provide that service in Portugal because cloud allows you to do that. The problem is that before that, when you had to be physically available, think about what expansion may have cost you, right? Then this is what it does because we know it creates that acceleration. And if you look at our marketplace in terms of just small businesses, there's a lot of small businesses in this country, but also across the continent, right? And they are truly the drivers of economic activity and also as well as job creation. And we are really focusing and double-clicking on it because we understand the opportunity that lies with it. Because the more you empower them, there's a more you can do in terms of job creation and making sure that you also drive GDP. But when it comes to large enterprises, you want them to focus on innovation. For me, it's important that our companies locally innovate because they have to be globally competitive. It's fantastic to see South African companies go into the continent and go elsewhere in the world and really go and make it. But all of these things are driven, they must be the tip of innovation, which technology enables you to do, and also making sure that it gives them the reach, it gives them the scale, but it also gives them the speed, because with cloud also comes the speed that you need in order for you to make some of these changes.
My goodness, this is fantastic. Now, as we're about to close, we're going to open up for questions now. I read somewhere, I come from a background of television and so on. The new catchphrase is that content is king. People can have many YouTube platforms and TV channels. If you don't have the content, you can have an empty channel and just watch some of the stuff that people watch on Sunday nights, right? Which is not really meaningful, right? But in your world, I heard you say something really nice, which resonated with me. Data is the new oil. That's beautiful. Tell us about that. What does that mean to me? Data is the new oil.
So if you think about it, data by most companies has been underutilized on many levels. And what creates intelligence in a business is what you're going to do with the data you capture. A lot of businesses are sitting on a lot of data, and they are not organizing it in the right way, infusing intelligence over it to make sure it gives them a desired outcome. And I'm going to make a very basic example, and all of us often go through it. You find that you bank or you shop at a place, they keep on treating you every time like you're new because they have not intelligently applied the data they have about you. Instead of knowing that, Mr. Nkosi, these are your habits, we know who you are, whatever, because now what they're doing is interpreting the data. So what we're doing with businesses is we're talking about making sure that they're starting to optimize their data platforms. Because when you infuse intelligence over your data, it actually helps you provide a differentiated service. It helps you provide a new service. We often talk about the 360 view of a person, whether it's a patient or whether it's a customer, whether it's a banking customer, which means you know me in my entirety, regardless of which platform I may enter, because you've collected enough data on me because you know how I behave. Data is really your differentiator. If you are going to mine that data to make sure that it drives the right business outcomes from you, that will make sure that it gives you a competitive edge. Because what is the point of collecting all of these data if you don't organize it in a way that it helps you to create differentiation, number one. It helps you create new services, number two. It helps you create personalization. People are looking for personalization. I don't want you to deal with me in a broad brush approach anymore in a very random way. But also data gives you intelligence because the more, in any simple way you analyze data, you start seeing a picture. You start seeing something new that you can't be doing as a result of your data. There are always hidden trends in data should you analyze it properly. That is why we talk about it's the new oil, it's the new gold. Because when you start mining those data, you start interpreting it, you start infusing intelligence over it, what you would get on the end, it's something brand new that can actually propel your business forward.
Well, thank you very much. That was so informative. So this brings us to the end of this part of the discussion. Is the microphone roving around? Can I see a show of hands for questions? 1, 2. Okay, so we start here. You were the first, right?
Check. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Tsepo. I'm currently working for Vodacom. My question is, since while we are in the telecoms industry, how did you know that this is the time to make a move? Because surely positions have been coming. What triggered the decision to say now it's the right time to take the next step? Because sometimes you get confused with the money, because your bosses might counter offer. So with you, what is it that told you this is the right move to make? And also with your leadership style, how do you, as Lillian, get to a point where you replicate yourself amongst your team so that they understand your vision? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will take 3. There's Lillian to Lillian. Okay.
Hi, Lillian. Hi. Sorry, Milton, I have 2 questions, if you don't mind. The first one is really around the softer issues, and I'll probably be at fault if I don't ask you as a woman coming out of September. We appreciate that we have to juggle balls. My question, what balls for you are crystal? What are the balls that you cannot afford to drop as we juggle these balls? So I think you hinted at it when you spoke about your boy, but if you can just expand a little bit in terms of what is precious to you in the balls that you're juggling. The second one is around digital is a good story to tell as an enabler. What scares you? What scares you about the digital human, how we replacing humanity with digital and tech? Just, yeah, if you can just share what are the things in technology that actually scares you?
Okay, so we'll take three. Are you okay with remembering those? Do you want to write them down, or?
Yes, I'm so digital. I don't have a pen. So I remember the 4 questions.
Okay,
already.
okay. So we're taking the third one, then
Yes.
we wait. Yeah. Okay, so.
Good evening, and thank you, Lillian, for sharing your story so authentically. My name is Marie Sibueng, and I head up a business called IMS Powerhouse Consulting. I have 2 questions. I think you spoke greatly around tech and tech being an enabler and the transition also around telecoms. I'm curious to get your view around the energy crisis we have as a country as well as a continent, and your view specifically around the leadership aspect of it. That is the one. And you shared your story around motherhood and the balance between managing your career and also being a mother. As the CEO of Microsoft, I'm curious around, from a professional perspective, what is the story you can share with us around your first attempt at learning failure, a sophisticated way around failure? And because I think there's great success in telling, there's great pride in telling success stories, but often it's in the failures, the things that didn't work, where I take a lot of output from or value. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. So Tsepo first.
Okay, so we've got those, right?
Yes, we've got 6 questions.
Okay, so over to you.
Since I'm a morning person, this is a real memory test. So, okay, good. So Tsepo, hello. So in terms of career moves, right, there's a couple of things. So at least this is what I do, because often when you have competing offers and they make counter offer, how confusing is that, right? And then you try to leave and they try to hang on to you. It's like, what do you want me to do? It's important to have mentors in your life that can guide you. It's important, because if you're just going to listen to your own voice, but most importantly your own fears, you're in trouble. So I would say consult that. And when I decided to make a move out of telecoms to IT, it wasn't like, oh, I'm overlaying the industries. Where can I go? I think this company is going to make progress. It wasn't really that. It was, I think my job is done here. I need to go elsewhere. I'm ready for a new challenge. And I'm going to challenge myself. And I always like to look at the world with an abundance mentality, to say, and if that does not work, I will always have options, right? Because sometimes we can tie ourselves and we can confine ourselves, and confinement is so dangerous because you're so afraid, oh, I've got a great job and I'm so good now, and what ifs, the what if scenarios. And sometimes you're just going to have to take a leap of faith. What do they say sometimes? You know, the only method of transportation you sometimes had is the wings, you know, on your back. And sometimes you're going to have to go and do that and be okay with it and say, so what if I fail? You will bounce back. By the way, that was the question that I asked myself during my business. When I started Lillian B, man, I got advice from everybody like, oh, you may need to downscale, you may. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? And then eventually I set myself down. I'm like, so what is the worst that could happen? So should this not work? I'm like, you could end up in another job. So is it that bad? It's actually not that bad. So have the courage of your convictions. What is the courage of your convictions? What do you think you want to do? What do you think you want to do with your life, etc.? And sometimes, as I said, some of the great opportunities don't always come glossy to you. Actually, none of my opportunities were glossy, right? Even this role at Microsoft that I have, compared to the other roles that I got offered when I left Vodacom, was not the most senior role. I mean, I joined as public sector director, and some people were like, is it senior? Don't you think you took a step down? We're not sure. And I thought, oh, I don't know, but I'm just going to go do this. And if I maybe don't like it, fine, I can move on and I can do something different. It was not with a guarantee that, if you take public sector director, you're definitely you're going to run the show. It was always kind of part of the plan, and I was always on the slate, but it was never kind of guaranteed. Now, your second question, remind me of your second question. My leadership style, leadership for me, I spend a lot of time on building leadership capacity, because I don't ever want to face the challenge of having one good person in my business. I want to create the multiplier. We have to multiply leadership. You have to multiply greatness. You have to multiply that, because that is the only way you can build a strong business, right? When the foundation of a strong business is incredibly capable people. It's actually not so deep. So you have to make sure you do that. So how do we do that, for example? More often than not, coaching. So if you think about executive coaching, often they'll tell you, oh, it's just for the top 5. I've democratized that in my business. I've given my most talented people executive coaches, and some of them are as young as, in their late 20s. Because you see talent, you see capability, you want to build that. We partner with certain schools. For example, for my women, we just completed a course with the Duke Corporate Education to make sure that we specifically focus on female leadership piece. We do a lot in terms of mentorship, sponsorship, exposure. So we're very clear about not only hiring leaders, but also building them in the business, because people often ask me the question, what legacy are you going to leave behind? I want to leave a cohort of incredibly strong leaders that will actually do better than I did when I was enrolled, and actually take this business to the next level, because even though we're doing well, I think the best is yet to come. And you need to create that boldness, and sometimes it's just not capabilities, about that boldness and confidence in people, and give them a sense of belief that they can. Because what sometimes gets in the way is not capability, is because we struggle with confidence. We struggle with courage. We struggle with those small things of I'm going to ask for this, I'm going to go for this. And you need to make sure that you embolden a cohort of leaders that are unafraid and that are super fearless. So have I answered your 2 questions? Good. So I'm going to, for namesake, Lillian. So your question around the balls and dropping for me, and so for me, I'm clear about that, and I think you need to have a conversation with yourself, as well as you perhaps also would seek advice from others. So for me, family is important. I never want my son to think, oh, my mom is always on LinkedIn, but I don't get to see her, right? That is why he can tell me, I'm over-mentored, Mom. I'm good. I don't need a mentorship this week. So I want to make sure that he understands that is my number 1 priority, and he should never doubt that in any moment. In any moment. Doesn't matter what I do in the world. He must understand I'm just Mom. And he believes that, right? And he knows that. It's important for him to know that. And he doesn't know it by what I say. He knows it by what I demonstrate. And which means I'm going to have to live this narrative. So that's important for me. Another piece that's important, by the way, my mom lives with me. She's almost now 80. That's an important ball for me. And, when they get older, they get ailments. And it's this and that, and I want to make sure that, okay, so where are you going to go now? That's an important ball for me, because it doesn't matter what I achieve in this lifetime. I'm not getting another mother, right? This is it, right? And that's important. So that family piece for me is important. Nurturing the right relationships around me that can lift you in your down moments, that are super progressive, those relationships that can challenge you is key. Another ball that's important for me is self-care. Because there's so much coming at you, whether it be your job or whatever's happening, you must learn to say no. No is a good answer to say, I just don't have the capacity to take that on. For example, I get inundated with mentorship requests. And at some level, I have to say no, because you cannot mentor 200 people. It's not realistic. So I do say no. But what I try to do always is to find forums. So what I'm thinking of doing with my team is to once a quarter have young people come into Microsoft, do a once-off mentorship session, and so on. Because otherwise, if you don't do self-care, you can't always be at your optimum. You can't always be at your best. And I want to make sure I'm always at my best. It's not always guaranteed, because sometimes your schedule takes on a form of its own. So for me, those are kind of the balls, and things such as small things like eating right, trying to move. I don't call it exercise anymore. I heard this latest moment called move. Just try to move. Do something. Exercise scares us, by the way, I learned. So just try to move. So I try to move in the mornings. So that time, prayer, meditation, for me, it's important. Let me get clarity. Let me create some self-reflection. Because I never want to have that fuzzy brain you become, because a job like this can quickly, you could panic about nothing. So I always try to make sure that I absolutely keep my calm. Now you need to remind me of your second question. What scares you around? Oh, technology. You know what, I wouldn't say what scares me, but what concerns me. What concerns me about technology and our approach, for me, the way that I look at technology, it's our opportunity to, as a continent and as a country, to bounce back. And when I sometimes see the sluggish adoption of technology in this country, I worry. What do I mean? We now have the opportunity through technology to give a child in rural South Africa the same level and quality of education as a child in Sandton. But we're not democratizing stuff like that, because what's true is that we're not going to go and build prestigious schools in some areas. But the pandemic showed us that with online, giving people the right technology, giving them the tools, the tech, the devices, you can create equality, because equality is not necessary. It's not money. It's access to opportunity, if we create that level of access. When I see the slow adoption sometimes in business, I feel that we're holding our own competitiveness behind. And we're all talking about the looming threat of technology is going to take jobs. But I want to change the narrative around what are we doing about upskilling and reskilling? And what I mean by that is that the 2 degrees I did at 21 is not what got me here. I was lucky enough to stay in a job where I got consistently trained. I got consistently upskilled. So there is an opportunity for us to look at upskilling our own people so that we can look at the net new jobs that are becoming available so that people can take on those jobs. Because we see the headlines where people say, oh, there are no jobs, but no. Actually, we do have jobs, but we don't have people for those jobs, right? So how do we make sure that we become a hub for some of these new tech jobs, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity? Why don't we create, cybersecurity centers where we not only serve South Africa, but we can serve, other parts of the world? And why should we be outsourcing some of those things? And this is kind of how I'm looking at it. I'm looking at more at the opportunity and what we need to do to get ourselves ready, because some other nations have gotten it right? If you look at India, they were very decisive to say, we are going to become a hub for technology. The world will come to us when they want to get expertise. And what has happened? Precisely just that. And I think we need to operate with that level of intentionality. Maria, your 2 questions. So your first one, you want me to talk about energy and what do I think? Let me be super vague in my answer. So at least the way that I think of it, right? I think it's a challenge. There's a lot of initiatives that companies are doing around sustainability. What are we going to do to make sure that we address the crisis? What concerns me a lot is that not everybody can afford to make their own plan. It's very disruptive, by the way, if you have not come up with your own plan in terms of putting some energy in your own house to make sure that you are operational. I just know that a lot of people are quite excited about the new board, but we also know that we should also not put unrealistic expectations on them. This is a much, much bigger and broader problem. But what I do know is that we need to address this problem with a sense of urgency, just the loss of productivity that we have, the loss of so many other things. And whether it's as simple as people getting stuck in traffic, just driving slower to work, there is a cost associated with it, is something that we should not, deal with any level of triviality. And I believe that as business leaders, whatever you can do in your space, because we all have different swim lanes, to lean in, we should try and make a difference. And that is how I look at it. Your second question. First attempt at learning. Oh, there are so many. I mean, it's like, so I talked about that one. One thing that I did find was, and I just read the Harvard Business Review article again, talked about women. We take slower to get, by the way, Milton, to the top. Men get there faster because we often have to work harder, prove ourselves over and over again. And I got into this role at 46. I can tell you most of my male peers who started with me got into some of these roles at 36. And you can throw in the towel very easily and become despondent and think, am I going to give up on my dream? Because no one believed that I could. Or you could navigate your way, and they have the saying that sometimes women have to move out to move up. And I think when I left IBM, that was exactly what I did. I'm like, I need to move out. because otherwise I'm just not going to move up from where I'm sitting. So you need to find your own way, that where you get stuck and stopped by the system, by people, maybe by managers who don't believe, by those who are trying to give you a very narrative of how far they think you can get to. You need to figure out a way to carry on in your own way. The biggest thing is about making sure that you make progress. Another point was, I remember when I was in Europe, everybody was 2 levels higher than me. And I remember going to my manager at the time and say, hey, I've just discovered everybody's 2 levels higher, so you kind of almost owe me a promotion. And he was super clear about, your promotion is really not a priority right now for me. And I thought, okay, that's so interesting. So what am I going to do with that statement, right? Because it's definitely not inspiring. So in those moments, you need to decide, am I going to continue to work hard and keep my eye on the price? Because you have many of those moments, right? Or am I going to just quit and leave my job? So I've had many of those moments where I just got sometimes delayed. And then you have those moments that as much as you got delayed, in some moments you get accelerated again, right? Because you have these varying moments. But my advice would be is make sure you keep yourself inspired, have the right people around you, the right mentors, the right coaches, so that you ask yourself always, I keep my eye on the final price. I'm not going to throw in a towel. And I always say this to people, that I knew at the age of 23 I was going to become CEO of an IT company. It was just which logo. I was that determined. Oh, but did I get stopped and stuck and delayed, and people telling me, no, you're not ready. Yeah, you may never reach those heights. And you're like, okay, that's your opinion, but I'm willing to work hard and do what I believe I can, in my capacity to ultimately, prove that I'm worthy of the role and worthy of the job.
So I have a question which has come via online. It's from Henrik Homunala. My question to the guest speaker is, what is Microsoft doing on the ground to ensure that Africa is in the same level with other big countries like China in a form of technology advancement?
Yeah, I think I talked about it already with regards to the data center and everything that we're doing, but there's a new drive and an agenda that we're focusing on to accelerate the impact of technology in the continent that is driven by our Africa Transformation Office. If you want more information, I can give that, of course, but we're doing a lot around skills development. Skills development is a big focus for us, because the reason why people do not participate in the digital economy is because they don't know where to start entering, right? And what's great about it is that we focus on skills development at all levels, right? From, high school all the way up. So that's a big thing for us. Another thing is that we're focusing on small businesses to make sure that small businesses get to participate, in the digital economy. Because one of the things, for example, as Microsoft, is that our technology gets deployed by partners. And what we want to ensure is that a lot of partners get to participate, in our partner network so that they could help with that. Another piece that we encourage our partners to do is to start innovating new things, because the challenges on this continent are super different. We need answers. Technology can provide the answers to many different things, and if we put the right tools in the hands of some people, they could actually help us develop that. So we have a plethora of initiatives at Microsoft, and I could easily share that. Even Professor Maurice Radebe, I could make that easily available so that people kind of just know the portfolio of things that we do, but also offer. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're taking the last round of questions, and then we close.
Ma'am Lillian, thank you so much for sharing your life's journey with us. I have only one question. You spoke about Psalm 133. So I just wanted to know that through your journey, as you faced difficulties and challenges, when you felt like giving up, did you have a mantra that you used, or you kept that scripture with you all the way? Thank you.
Okay. And then 2 here.
All right, good evening. Lillian, my name is Makhoto. Just to also answer and maybe further augment the question that was asked online regarding what Microsoft is doing in the partner network. So I do work for a Microsoft security partner, and I think to further attest to it from a data perspective, for every dollar that Microsoft makes, they do enable partners to make about $10 as well. So that level of ratio in terms of return on investment really attests to the seriousness that I think Microsoft drives in terms of enabling the partner ecosystem. So just to come back to Lillian, I do drive customer success at a Microsoft security partner. This is by day, and by night I do own my own data analytics startup, as well as other skills development initiatives that I drive within the consumer predictive analytics space. My question for you is just around the migration and driving application migration, and how it tends to be quite a bittersweet moment, right? So we've seen the phenomenal work that Microsoft has done, and you specifically, Lillian, you being able to drive our enterprise customers, Standard Bank being one of them. I had an opportunity to be part of the partner network as well, where you were able to renew. And ladies and gentlemen, the enterprise agreement, I don't know if it's appropriate to share, but it was a multi-billion rand enterprise agreement that Lillian spearheaded last year. And I think these are some of the initiatives worth celebrating. And this is only just one bank. But I think in Microsoft's pursuit to drive remote work and really migrating customers into the cloud, what customers tend to neglect in terms of the undercurrent and the foundation of migration is cybersecurity, where we're so excited to migrate our workloads, but we take for granted that we may be victims of cyber attacks as well. And even though we may be small and medium enterprises and undermine the extent to which we could be victims, it isn't only us. It can also be access to our suppliers or access to our more elaborate customers as well. So this month is October. I know that Microsoft is driving a cybersecurity awareness month. Yeah, I think it's a hashtag be cyber secure. So I just wanted to find out what initiatives is Microsoft driving in collaboration with security partners, and how can we really enable our SMB customers to be able to take on cybersecurity not as an afterthought, but more so as an indemnifier against cybersecurity attacks, and really adopt it as a lifestyle.
Good day, my name is Katla Khumeng. I am 17 years old and I am a published author. I just have...
Publish a book.
I just have two questions for you, and one of them being, in today's society as a woman, it's very hard to step into spaces and be respected by everyone and be heard. So how did you go about in getting to a space and owning it and making sure that you're heard? My second question is, when everything is happening and you're achieving everything, at times we tend to lose our true self. How did you get back on track and understand who Lillian is, what she's about, her likes and all those things? How did you manage to stay on track and separate your work life with your personal life, your mental health, and all those things? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Right, just behind you there, just here on the aisle. Yeah, you, yes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Audrey Mpela, and I'm a retail systems training specialist. I wanted to find out regarding your mentorship program. I've got quite a lot of questions, but I don't think I'll be able to address them tonight. But I'm big on skills development, and I also would like to be skilled up and get on some type of mentorship program. So you mentioned that you do have your 200 mentees or proteges. So I wanted to find out, how does one become part of that program of mentorship?
Okay, right. That's the end, right? No one feels left out. I mean, we've covered pretty much everything. Oh, there's you. Sorry, ma'am. Last. Lillian, you're writing these questions, right? I've forgotten. I tried to remember. Yeah, short and sweet, please. Yeah.
Good evening. Thanks, Ms. Lillian. I just want to ask you, if you had an opportunity to have breakfast with the ladies that have just been appointed at the ESCOM board, what advice would you give them about leadership?
Right. Lillian, where do you even begin?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm trying to not answer anything about...
Just keep the lights on, I say.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me start with my mantra. So there's a talk that I have that talks a lot about confidence, courage, and it talks in the end about belief. What do you believe? And how do you keep your belief alive? And I know that in many spaces where I operate, that people may not be Christians, but Christianity is my belief. And this is how I keep my heart inspired. This is how I keep myself motivated. And when I talk about meditation and prayer, that has been my go-to. This becomes my go-to. This is how I was brought up. But you actually can't say this is how you was brought up, because let's be frank, when you have a choice, when you're an adult, you can decide to also walk away from it. Let's be clear. You do it because you know it is true and you know it works. And that becomes that higher sense of purpose, someone bigger than you, and understanding that level of reverence. And to answer your question, so my mantra comes from many places in the Bible. There's so many things, promises that you can stand on in your greatest moments, in your darkest moments, where you can stand on and think, I believe that it is still true, and that is where it comes from. And it doesn't matter what you have to do, and that becomes my go-to. Another piece also for me that keeps my heart inspired, and very, very blessed to have my mom still alive. She is great counsel. She's a great mentor. She's a great coach, a great confidant too. And always inspire my heart. She would say that, listen, I've raised you bold. And I love that when she says it to me, because there can be moments in life when you forget, right? So those becomes kind of like the things that I do, my mantra meditation every day. You have to do it every day, right? This is like, for me, I can't just do it once a week and hope. It's that daily discipline that I've now embedded into my life. It's what I do. It's who I am. So I hope that answers your question. Also, books. Books are great because you get storylines. You read something, you think, what? How did they do this? I am inspired by that. Reading people's stories, understanding why are people doing it, how they are wired. And I like to understand, how did people overcome? I love overcomers, because those people challenge you when you realize that half the battles we fight, it's often, it's a mental battle. It's in your mind. Winning starts in the mind. Everything we want often starts in the mind, and how do we get ourselves and have the right mindsets? Even coming into a role like this, you could second out yourself, right? Because let's be frank, it's not every day that you find a lot of black people, a lot of black women in it, because you've not really seen enough. But what gives you that fearlessness and boldness to say, I'm going to execute this at my highest level, right? It's that sense of belief in terms of what you believe it's true, and also what you know, how you were made, right? And how you were created, and for what you were created. The second one is let me come to the cybersecurity one. Let me continue to answer some of these others. Talking about be respected, and that's a hard one, let's be frank, right? Because I don't have that problem anymore. I have the title. I walk into a room, I'm senior. I'm older, thank goodness. And I'm also have the title. So I don't struggle with being undermined, people talking over my head. We all know those things. We've gone through it, right? You walk in, it's like they saw nobody. So how's it possible? I just walked in, right? So we all have gone through that in our corporate lives. Let me tell you what my approach to that is now, and what I say to young women, because it's a frequently asked question. I said, look for an ally. I'm training also. I talk a lot to the men in my business about being allies. To say, be careful, because often women make a point, you just move on the conversation, right? It's like nothing was said. Train them and teach them. So look for an ally. Ask someone to help you, be your voice, right? To help you stand out in those moments, because it is harder when you're younger to assert yourself, because the way often that corporate is curated, that those rooms may not be trained to listen to your voice. So find that mentor, find that coach, find that ally who can help you, in those moments. And sometimes it's good also to fight for your voice, and in a very positive way, to put up your hand, ask questions. Sorry, I did say something. Can I reiterate, right? These things sometimes, takes a lot of courage, especially in a room full of people where you say, no, I just made a point. And I actually gave a young niece of mine just similar advice to say, and don't be afraid to ask questions, because sometimes you end up in a conversation in a boardroom where the conversation is so elevated where you think, I don't even know what to contribute. But the best thing you can do is to ask the question. I don't understand that. Could you explain it to me? I think also the world has moved on beyond judging people for asking questions, right? Because the smartest people ask the greatest questions. It's not about having the answers. And often than not, you will find that you ask the question that a lot of people have. They just don't have the courage to ask it. And free yourself of fear. This is what I didn't know that, but when I was younger, I was still, I don't understand it. Can you help me? How do you do that, right? You will find that you kind of find your way a lot in life. Authenticity and how did I remain my real self? They often describe authenticity very simple of, if you have to take your house and you go from the living room and to the lounge and to the bedrooms, do you remain the same person? If your friends are there, your colleagues are there, your family are there. And often people do change from room to room depending on who's in the room. It takes a lot of courage in life to remain yourself, but I was not willing for the people to rob me of who I am, because who I am at my core is the strongest I'll ever be. And if you think about it, your most brilliant moments are when you are at the core of who you are. But often we get talked out of ourselves. But I must tell you, I was told also in corporate, you are too much of yourself. No, seriously, I got that kind of feedback in performance reviews. And then I thought, so what do you want me to be? Pretend? Now, I can tell you, maybe if I decided to pretend, maybe I would have gotten to certain points faster. Yeah, there is a price to pay. You decide what price you want to pay. Now, I'm so glad I decided to get here my way. I can sit today in this chair and I can be authentically me. I am me. The person you meet is the person you'll see at Microsoft, is the person you'll see at my family. And it was perhaps a longer route, but it's the road that I would always travel because it's so much more worthwhile. Making sense? Thank you.
A lot of sense.
Advice about leadership and the mentorship program. So the mentorship program, maybe what I should do is that is to come where I want to invite people on a first-come, first-served basis to Microsoft. And I could share their data as well as Prof. Hadebe with people who want to come. I've now realized that I have an obligation to say that once a quarter I could do this, one-to-many mentorship. So let me do that, because I did speak to my comms lead about it. And I will give them the information, invite people to Microsoft. We are now back so that I could do that too, because the one-on-ones are just not doable for me. Breakfast advice on leadership. Sure, it's hard because, boards are having a fiduciary duty. Boards don't make operational decisions, right? They may meet now often, this board, given where the company is at, but often, having sat on boards, they meet like 4 times a year. And when you meet 4 times a year, that's great, but you don't impact the business like I do daily. I go every day and I do something that will drive that business forward, right? So, and I think probably, a person whom I know very well, Mteto, he's sitting on this board, and I think this board has encouraged us. And based on the confidence that I think the society has expressed in that board, for them just to go out and walk out what we believe is doable, to make sure that we propel the utility forward, is our expectation. Of course, our expectations are high, but I think also it needs to be somewhat realistic. So I think we have sufficient leadership on the new board, which I believe will be used in the right way. And I don't have any particular advice to give them, right, except for making sure that, and I know that they will do it, carrying out their fiduciary duties with absolute grace and grit and confidence, right? And that is what we all expect, making sure that we progress. Everybody wants to see progress on this utility. I think the last one is on cybersecurity, that one. Cybersecurity is a new conversation. Cybersecurity came about as a result of all of us moving online, right? It became a huge opportunity, but also challenge for businesses, because there became new entrants into the market. And we know that South Africa is a hotbed for that. We're doing a lot of work. In fact, we're having a roundtable. You talked about it coming up this month. And I love it when companies, we've got a lot of small companies focusing on cybersecurity, and they're really doing well. We have to create that heightened awareness, because very often, as you rightly said, it's an afterthought. First, when a company suffers an attack, it's like, oh my gosh, we need to do something about our security posture. And we have this whole notion around zero trust policy. And we have to make sure it's more education, and beyond education is about making sure that our customers invest in the right tools to ensure it actually keeps the environment secure, but also for them to understand the cost of not doing it. So some of the work that companies like yourselves are doing to create that awareness, to make sure that customers understand the examples, we absolutely need that level of partnership in the market.